One of our taglines, or our tagline, is the home of Benton Harbor history. And that has enabled us to tell the story not only of the Mortons, but how important they were to the founding of Benton Harbor, to the growth of Benton Harbor. They were integral in that. Maybe Denise wants to touch on it a little bit.
Yeah, the house was built in 1849, and it's lived just a variety of lives since then. It began, of course, as a family home, and 4 generations of Mortons lived here. Then it was served as a clubhouse for the Federation of Women's Clubs. And when the Federation began to kind of split apart, there weren't so many ladies' clubs around anymore. Then they turned it into a museum. And then in its latest version, it's a historical museum where we actually accumulate and disseminate the history for Benton Harbor.
I think it's always been interesting with the history as we uncover little bits and pieces to see how the Mortons were so important, and they mirrored what was going on in the country at the time, and we're able to bring that back to the community and see how then Benton Harbor developed along with the country. We had some moisture problems, a little bit of mildew that would grow in the off-season always, and we knew that there was dampness in the basement. It was a big decision to decide to do something to the building that wasn't just restoring historically the basement. We became very aware that some of the supports were just bricks, old Chicago common brick that just disintegrates with age and with moisture, and then the drying and the cold temperature. That's all that was holding up the floor at the time in certain places. And the project foreman, I believe, came to me and suggested that they could leave it, which they did not recommend because the floor was going to really sag and dip, or they could put in smart jacks. We wound up putting, I believe, 5 or 7 in, and it was the best solution for the problems that were being exemplified in the basement. Shoring up the basement foundation, which had started to crumble through the years, was absolutely the right thing to do.
There's just so many things that could go wrong with an old house. And one of the things we were really concerned about was the moisture and the smell in the house. That had to change.
We have a Michigan basement and then a lot of crawl space, and out of sight, out of mind. I think I'm the only board member that has crawled around in all those little places. I see it, but it's really dark down there, and I didn't know how bad it was. So you just keep going and think that everything's going to be okay until it isn't. And I'm just glad that we caught it before something catastrophic happened. He did map out the whole crawl space, and that was very, very helpful for us because we didn't quite know what areas were connected to what areas, because the house, I think, had been built onto several times. I loved the cruise. Especially, there was a young man who wanted a tour, and I gave him a tour on his lunch break. And he just said, I feel that the work I'm doing is so important because it's going to help save this building. And he just loved history. So that just made me feel so good that real care was being taken throughout the project, throughout the work. They weren't just working to get it done. They truly did want to help us and help the building. Al was the foreman that worked on the project, and he too enjoyed the little tour. I gave the tour to the whole team as they got started, and he was going to bring his family back and come down to Benton Harbor for the weekend and enjoy the beach and things, but also get a tour of the Morton house. it's like the building, the house is happy. That's what we say. And I feel like we did a good service to the building to give it its foundation more life. We often say that the biggest artifact that we own is the building. And people ask sometimes, what would happen if it would burn or something would happen to it? Would you rebuild it? Would you have the museum continue? And we would continue the museum, but it would not be the same because this is our biggest artifact. So we did, by hiring Ayers, by entrusting our future into your hands, basically, we were able to secure that foundation, literally and figuratively, to move forward, hopefully for another 170 or 200 years.